Explained by the Billy Meier contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Teleprojection. A note: this is a technology not yet known on Earth. Perhaps the closest technology currently available might be holography. See also real visions. Contact Report 057.
So I want to ask the first question. Amada Stetter writes it this way. Are these large ships, which I see again and again, with a large superstructure and many cabins, simply spaceships or even large capacity ships? How many people are on a ship like this?
This description of the objects is neither one nor the other, but quite simply very large emigration ships with an average diameter of 120 kilometers, with a capacity for human life forms of around 1 million. These gigantic ships serve exclusively for emigration purposes, especially when a world is very endangered and destruction is to be considered. These are the same giant migratory ships that were used by our ancestors at the earliest times, when they came from the Lyra Vega region to Earth and later also settled on our Pleiades constellation. Their external shape and size have been maintained since then, but they have been subject to constant innovations of a technological form, so they are equipped today according to the state of the art. When Amada received our teleimpulses as teleprojections, she saw everything in an extremely reduced form because she would not have been able to grasp and overview the gigantic size and the reality of it.
Aha, then she practically saw something like models?
No, that is not quite so, because she sees the projections as quite large.
She goes on to write, what do these creatures mean who, on Thursday night, climbed out of a wonderful blush in the sky, each time after a bolt of lightning that was not followed by thunder, got out of a vehicle and descended on UFOs stationed in the vicinity of our house, on or over trees, etc. They were all dressed in white robes and they were all looking at me. One climbed down a staircase in a long white garment with wonderful glittering silver stars on the robe. He went under my window and then went to a UFO stationed under a tree. From there he looked up to me, while more and more other beings in white clothes and in whole groups came here.
This phenomenon is a teleprojection on our part for the purpose of triggering memory. The beings wrapped in white clothes embody our ancestors from a period of approximately 70,000 years ago, who came to Earth at that time, but who did not live in fixed houses, but in their free-floating beam ships, which they had stationed mainly over forests. Hence the UFOs seen by Amada and floating above trees, as she says. Between the ships, there were radiation belts of visible nature which served as connections between the formations and lit up at intervals. These are the flashes Amada saw. The man dressed in the wonderful robe with the adorning stars was the Ishwish of this emigration group, whose most distant descendants still live somewhere on the Earth as their own smallest group of former extraterrestrials, but whom we have not yet been able to find by any means imaginable. In the meantime, we could only find out with certainty that Amada, from her old personalities, must today be a very distant descendant of the brother of the former Ishwish, which means that this group of extraterrestrials, who, as mentioned, were a part of our ancestors, must have mixed with terrestrial people here on Earth and forgot their actual origin. And to find out how these connections extend now, and how and where today's descendants of these ancestors live is one of our tasks, and that is why we also are making an effort for Amada.
This is really fantastic. Then here's another question from Amada. On Friday evening, a vehicle came out behind the moon, hanging on 2 clouds, and floated down onto the roof opposite our house, which was suddenly covered as if by a white blanket of snow. An old man with white glasses looked out of the window. The vehicle remained only briefly on the roof, rose again and floated past my window, while the old man looked at me insistently. Then it ascended again to the sky and disappeared behind the moon.
This teleprojection is the representation of the brother of the old Ishwish to solve further memory factors in Amata. The beam ship, or vehicle, as Amata says, floating between two clouds, means the representative position of the old man as Ishwish.
Good. Then the next Amata question. Other white figures sat again on the opposite balconies. A man in a white robe was lifted out of a UFO by two men in gray working clothes and lifted onto a stage where he sat down and looked up to me. Down in the courtyard of the neighboring house stood a bunch of people in gray working clothes right next to this stage. One of these men detached himself from the group, lit a star, and hung it over the garden railing. More and more people came in large beam or spaceships and settled on the surrounding roofs. Then came again beings in white garments and in vehicles which looked like thick tree trunks and had large cabins. With these vehicles they drove directly into an already present big ship. Could these white creatures be sons of heaven?
Our ancestors and us in former times were called sons of heaven by the earth humans. This teleprojection is a reference to the past, the present, and the future. However, I cannot officially give the interpretation because these are exactly those things that I'm only allowed to explain to you and your closest group, as I indicated earlier.
It seems that Amata is very much involved with teleprojections. Is there not a danger that she will be overwhelmed?
But now, I want to give you the explanations. The white figures Amata had seen on the opposite balconies are teleprojections of the old venerable ones of long-gone times. These are the beings who begat and ruled the white earthly human races. But there are also their descendants among them who in peaceful form pushed forward and determined, up to a certain value, the later earthly development of humankind. So they are the true ancestors of the white earthly human race, while the people in gray working clothes, the folk, as Amata calls them, represent earthly mankind in all its colors and races of today, standing next to a large platform. This platform symbolizes the foundation of truth, knowledge, and wisdom, onto which two gray-clad earth humans lift a man dressed in a white gown, whom they have previously lifted out of a beam ship. After they have lifted the white-dressed man onto the stage, one of the two men takes a star and lets it shine in bright light, in order then to hang it brightly on a fence. These pictures symbolize the present. This is the call of time and evolution in the sense of knowledge and dissemination of truth in the Aquarian era. The venerables, dressed in white, mentioned above, are and were the origin of all human life existing on the earth today in their known form. Everything was determined and directed and partly pre-programmed by them, but this never elevates them to hierarchical forces or powers, because such values do not exist. However, due to the willfulness of the earth humans, who are many races, many things failed and went in very Osgarditon, got very badly out of control of the good human nature, and negative tracks. Thus it was determined by the decision of the old venerable ones in foreseeing of the coming events that at the time of the Aquarian era a new prophet should appear, who already would have been so in former times as other personalities had who walked the earth and patiently fulfilled his very heavy duty, true to his mission. So it had been foretold by the venerable ones that at a certain time the same prophet would come again incarnated in a new personality, begotten by predestination and born by earthly parents, as was the case in former times, but begotten at that time by the seed of a son of the heavens. The incarnation of the prophet in the Aquarian age is represented by the image, of two beings dressed in gray, a man and a woman, two Earth humans, lifting a man dressed in white out of a beam ship and putting him on a platform from where he will spread the knowledge of truth, wisdom, and love. The great multitude, as Amata says, represents the mass of earthly humanity that hears and receives his teaching, while his light of wisdom shines and radiates, symbolized by the shining star suspended from the fence. This action takes place through another gray-clad being, an earth woman. This is Amata herself, for she makes the star shine and hangs it on the fence, which represents the barrier between knowledge and ignorance, and between truth and untruth. The hanging or placing of the star on the fence symbolizes the state of the prophet who has overcome the barrier of ignorance, so he is able to fulfill his mission. But the doing of enlightening and putting the star on the fence also shows the state of Amata, her important role, which she has to exercise in connection with the mission fulfillment of the prophet. Because through her connection to our ancestors, which we have meanwhile established, she was destined to help the prophet in the form of her teleprojective connections and contacts to us, to be able to testify through her teleprojective connections and contacts to us that we exist and maintain actual contacts with the prophet himself. This, however, is only of importance in the narrowest of circles through which the basic values in every relationship are developed and disseminated. This should remain a secret of the inner circle until 1980 at the earliest, because it would not be of value and not of good to reveal this secret too early. This is fundamentally the interpretive value of this important teleprojection. In Amata's important interest, it should also be mentioned that certain projections of these things are unavoidable for us, because only through them can we track down these very old facts anchored in the memory banks and memories penetrating very deeply into her subconscious, which can provide us with valuable information about the connections that are extremely important to us. But Amata should be careful not to deal with the projections more than necessary. On the other hand, we have also noticed that Amata is burdened with misleading teleprojections from an unknown side, which obviously serve a lower purpose. We have known this for some time, but have not yet been able to produce an analysis. So let her exercise caution. We will continue our efforts to find out where these strange teleprojections come from and what their real reasons are. However, this task is made very difficult for us, because the teleprojection impulses are so distorted that we cannot locate their origin. But now I want to interpret the last part of our teleprojection, if you are also informed about it, because also this is important for you to know, about which you should also keep the deepest silence until the year 1980. Consider that the religious powers of the earth are always anxious to maintain and preserve their power. Thus they would act maliciously and treacherously against you if the interpretations given to you here were made known to them. They would not shy away from terror, murder, and other evil acts of violence, and would pursue you everywhere and try to destroy you. The further appearing figures with white clothes are the earth humans of the future, who through the teachings of the prophet will knowingly become wise and defeat ignorance in any form, whereby they will build large but still primitive spaceships, with which they will fly to other stars and planets foreign to the Sol system for the first time after a very long time, and establish contact with other races of humans in the universe. This is represented by the flying tree trunks with the large cabins that fly into an already present large ship. This is the interpretation of this teleprojection, which we sent out by teleimpulses for certain reasons, and which was apparently actually received by Amata.
Contact Report 061.
How many people in Europe are actually in teleprojective contact with you, Plearin, at the moment in a conscious form?
2,
Are these men or women?
They are two female beings, one of whom is a Mata.
Aha! And how many other contacts in conscious teleprojective form do the Plejaran maintain around the world?
In really conscious form, so that the Earth humans know this, only the two are total, a Mata and the other woman.